Hi everyone, c'est moi. I'm just going to do a short little video. I say short, I'll try. You know what I'm like. Queen of waffle. Anyway, I just suddenly thought that maybe you need a little bit of guidance on how to do this section B part of your exam, which we're calling a practice paper, but you know it's really a mock technically, because you're going to be doing that part of the paper when we get back after half term. So I thought maybe some guidance would be good. So it is. I'm just going to start actually. So section A of your drama GCSE written paper is Blood Brothers, which you have already completed, and section B, that's at 50 marks, as you already know. And section B is your theatre review, your live theatre review, which is out of 30 marks. So it is one essay, one question, 30 marks. So you can imagine when you were getting to the 8-mark questions and beginning to struggle a bit about how to break them down, that is even more complicated when you then get to the 30-mark question, because you're breaking quite a big chunky question down. So that's kind of what I want to go through with you a little bit, so that you're prepared for that when you come to do this question. And this is one of the reasons I suggest that people try to do the paper backwards, because maybe better to get that big essay out of the way first, and then moving backwards through the paper. But that is, of course, your choice, and that depends on how you work best. So and this PowerPoint is a little bit outdated, so there are some things that I'm going to tell you to sort of ignore, and most of it is still relevant. Okay, so some of the facts about section B of the paper. There are only 2 sections, so this is it. First of all, it's therefore the final question of the paper, and it is compulsory to answer it, so it is your question 9, because obviously you have 8 questions on Blood Brothers, 2 4-markers, 3 6-markers, 3 8-markers, and then your question 9 is the actual theatre review. Now obviously, normally we would have gone to see Woman in Black, and you'd be writing about that, and the reason for that is because it always gets the best sort of results across the country, and that is because it has the most, in my opinion, to say. So almost, you know, whatever question you get, you can answer on Woman in Black, because so much happens in it and it's so engaging, and there are just so many effects and so much interesting acting and multi-rolling, which is why it's really useful. So you can imagine one year when a group of students got the question about choosing one character to write about, and their teacher had taken them to see a puppet show. It's a little awkward. So that's why we chose Woman in Black as your live theatre review. Obviously, that trip never happened. Fingers crossed it will happen next May. I'm sure by then we should be in a better position to travel, and hopefully we'll get to go and see Blood Brothers as well. But at the very least, we need to go and see Woman in Black. For now, you'll be writing about Peter Pan, obviously, as part of your for your theatre review. So that, if you haven't watched it yet, then you have a lot of drama work to do now. That has been your homework for the last kind of few weeks, really. So you need to get on it, because it's very easy to ruin the whole exam grade with this part of the paper. Don't let it happen to you. You are my students. Do not let it happen. Okay, so this again, the question will ask you to evaluate or analyze, and this PowerPoint kind of says that those are 2 different things, but actually they're not really. Effectively, the theatre review is asking you to read the question, answer the question, to come up with a point that answers the question, give a specific example from the play that you've seen, and then justify your point. So really, each question will effectively expect you to evaluate and analyze. It really is so similar that I wouldn't worry about that too much. Just do what you always do in drama. Make your point, give a specific example, justify your point in relation to the question. The question will have a specific aspect of a production that it will focus on. It will be related to acting, design, direction. So again, actor, director, designer, or the characteristics of the play. I mean, to be honest, usually it so far has given an opportunity to talk about characterization and semiotics. And by semiotics, of course, I mean set, lighting, sound, costumes, props, etc. So the important that you've got, that you know that. If you know, we still haven't had the question. I was expecting it this year of how were semiotics used in a performance to have impact on the audience. You know, that could well come up, and if you then have forgotten what semiotics mean, then we have a problem. It could be a question just on proxemics. And if we want to be really challenging, it could be a question on genre. So how is genre shown in a live theatre review? Now, obviously, if genre comes up in The Woman in Black, that's pretty straightforward. It's a gothic horror or a Victorian ghost story. Any of those comments would work. We had artistic intention this time, and you guys know that like the back of your hand. And again, if you just kept it really simple last year and said the intention is to scare the audience, and then this is how that happened through acting and direction and design, then that would be a really good answer. Lots of really high answers, and I think I will send out to you, I'll try to send out to you either Ella's or Dominic's from last year. They're a little bit difficult to read because they're obviously their real exam. Oh, let's just pretend that didn't happen. They're obviously their real exam, so you'd have to maximize them quite a bit, but I'll add them to one of them to this, I think, as an exemplar answer. Usually the question will be about the impact on you as the audience member or the audience in general as well. So just be aware that that's the second part of the question, the sort of don't forget about it. Again, like I've always said, circle the keywords and don't forget the last bit, the justification bit, the impact on the audience. And again, you don't have to write like an A-level student. You are GCSE student. So the student in the first year got the highest grade, wrote things like the jump scares really frightened me as an audience member, and got really high marks. You know, you don't have to try to sound over intellectual. Answer the question. That is what you get marks for. So at the start of the answer, you do need to state your name, the venue, and the date that you went to see the production. That's just kind of in a way like proof, I guess, that you went to see it. So it's a good idea if everyone has the same thing written down. I've seen some interesting ones. Obviously, in this case, you saw a National Theatre recorded live production, so that is a little bit different. But on the PowerPoint, you'll see what to write. So I'm just thinking about looking at my notes here. So if you think about the fact that it's a right, this is important. So it's out of 30, as I said, and therefore it's worth 15% of your entire GCSE. Now, if you think about it like this, that's 5% more than your devising project. So it's a significant proportion. And in the first year, there were a couple of students who missed this question out entirely because they just panicked about the fact that it was just such a big question. That is a classic game over situation. You've got to answer it. If you really think about it, think about the 8-mark questions and think about breaking it's effectively, you're just breaking this exam into 3 big paragraphs with an introduction and an ending and a conclusion. So a 30-mark question is basically 3 big chunks of points, or 6 if you have the time. So one year there was a question about the visual impact of the visual elements on an audience member. So you might say to yourself, right, what visual elements am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about the set, I'm going to talk about the costumes, and I'm going to talk about the way that the lighting impacted visually on, and those are the three things in relation to the question I'm going to talk about. How were those three things used, and how did that create impact on the audience? Okay. Right. So it's out of 30 marks, and 10 of those marks are given for your use and understanding of drama terminology. And so that is all of your keywords that you use all the time. If you talk about acting, it's pitch, tone, emphasis, gesture, facial expression, posture, body language, eye contact, tone, all of those things. And if you're talking about semiotics, it is all your actual terminology that you learned anyway, that you've been learning since year 9, really, but enhancing in year 10, and that you all studied in quite a lot of detail for your blood brothers part of the exam. So the same terminology applies, but you get a lot of marks for it here. It's worth a lot of marks, and it's the easy part to score marks for, because it's very easier for an examiner to just tick every time you've got a keyword in there. You know, it's also words like to do about the meaning communicated. So words like tension, suspense, climax will also get you marks in drama terminology. So try not to be vague. Try to talk about. Try to be very specific in your use of drama language. And then the other 20 marks are for your ability to analyze and evaluate. So the impact on the range of elements that the play had on you as an audience member. And you must use specific examples and moments from the production. That is just absolutely key. So don't forget to do that as well. You've only got 35 minutes for this question. So my strongest recommendation that I can give to you is that you spend 5 minutes at least planning your answer. Otherwise, you will go off on a tangent and you will waffle. And the way to do that is to start by circling the keywords so that you work out in your head what it is that the question is asking. It's better to write an answer that you don't feel sounds very intellectual that answers the question, because those often get 30 marks out of 30, than to go off on an absolute tangent, sounding like a philosopher and not really answering the question. And that it's also a drama answer, not an English one, so that you're giving practical examples. Okay, so obviously it'll say evaluate, analyze, discuss. I wouldn't worry too much about circling that. Every essay will ask you to do that, but they need to break the question apart. If you don't break the question apart, and you can use the first page of the notes to make a bubble diagram or bullet point what you're going to be answering. You know, it's possible that you'll actually get some marks for that. So underline and circle the keywords, you know, always for Blood Brothers and for the theatre review, break the question apart. And then extend words that have more than one element. So clearly it's asking you to talk about technical aspects. Make a note to yourself about what those technical aspects are. Lighting, sound, music, special effects. There you have your answer, basically. That's what you're going to be discussing. Another bit of the key wording is how it impacted you as an audience member. So if you forget that second half of the question, then it's bye-bye to a full marks. So here you have a perfect example of how you can break the question apart, plan your answer for full marks. So you've already made a decision that you're going to discuss how lighting was used to make an impact on you, how sound was used to make an impact on you, music and special. So you've got your four big paragraphs right there, and then you've got your introduction where you're basically explaining to the examiner what it is, your 2 or 3 sentences, no more, and then your conclusion where you're summing up. Do not tell the examiner the plot of what you've seen. You will get 0 marks for saying Woman in Black is a story about a haunted house You will get 0 marks for saying Peter Pan is a story about a young boy growing. It's not what it's asking. You're not going to get any marks for telling the story. It's the absolute easiest way to get no marks for it wants you to evaluate and analyze, not to tell the story, because we can all tell a story. That is not what this is asking. So you might say something like, the spotlight and red gel on the spotlight in center stage on the dog in Curious Incident of blah, 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 as an opening was very powerful, created a sense of foreboding, built immediate tension and shock factor in the audience. This made me feel frightened what was about to come. It impacted on me because it put me in suspense. And so I'm verbling here, but there's like 7-8 points in what I've just said right there already, marks. So you don't have to write loads. That's the other thing. So many people who have written quite short essays have got full marks because they're answering the question. It's just about picking up those marks. So if you look at the next question, that one is asking you how the director's use of semiotics was used within the opening. So you'd extend the word semiotics into what they are and then decide which ones you wanted to talk about. And again, you don't have to talk about all of them. You really don't. But I would always start with an introduction where you sort of tell the examiner what it is that you're going to answer, So for the first one here, maybe in the production of Peter Pan, the technical aspects had a real impact on me. I will be discussing how lighting, sound, music, and special effects affected me as an audience member. And then you've already said, this is what I'm going to be doing. And then in your conclusions, you would say something like, as you can see, had so-and-so impact on me, a big impact on me. I'm going to not really say much about this one. You'd have to pick out key moments of the performance for all. Whether it was analyze or evaluate, you always use the elements of the performance as your example. And this is an interesting one because this used to be what you had to do. You had to talk about the positive and negative impact that the play had on you as an audience. The exam board says you no longer have to talk about anything that you felt was negative, but I always recommend that you put 2 or 3 in, just in case. Just things, don't write it down as a negative. Clearly, if you're talking about a national theatre production, you go, this was really bad and this was really awful. That's not really a good look because you're talking about, highly professional theatre. So it would be better, and this is what people who got full marks did last year, to say things like, if I were to improve, or I would have preferred to see this, rather than really slating anything about the production, and then to actually make a comment about why you didn't feel it was as effective as it could have been, and how you would have improved this. So for example, with Blood Brothers, which you can't write about. You cannot write about Blood Brothers, whatever happens, because that's your set text for the first half of the exam. But if we were using that as an example, then I would say that I didn't really find the woman going mad on the hill scene very effective, because I felt that the strobe light and the red gel was over the top and melodramatic. Could have been done in a more eerie, creepy way with a reverb and echo on her child's voice, for example. So you have to be able to then also offer some kind of solution. When you are planning your essay, preferably briefly on paper and not in your head, as it says there, it is really worth those 5 minutes to plan it out. So in your introduction, really quick, as I said, really quick description of the show. It's got to be no more than a couple of sentences because you're not getting marks for this. A new paragraph for each point you make. So, as I said earlier, you might have a paragraph on lighting, a paragraph on sound, and so on, depending on what the question is asking. Clearly, if it's just asking about characterization, you're not going to be writing about that. You should have at least three. You should aim for at least 3 paragraphs. If you have the time, you could do up to 6. Remember to have, so like I said, you could do a paragraph on each of the extended words on your key questions. Not going to go on too much about the negative point because I've already said about that. Right, this is quite a good one actually, this part of the slide. So, evaluate how the use of set and props within a live production impacted you as an audience member. So there you are, you're looking at set and you're looking at props. So you're extending those words and deciding what you're gonna write about. What were your bits from this? This happens to be an example from Woman in Black. So they've talked that in terms of set. This person has decided to talk about the nursery scene. You'll find out all about this when we go, and the use of the gauze and the rocking chair and the wicker basket. So those 4 props enough to get a full mark answer. So state your point at the start. Within The Woman in Black, I felt that there was excellent use of staging, particularly in order to build tension of this ghost story genre. Right, so as you can see throughout here in red, drama terminology is being used. Staging, tension, genre, stage left, upstage left, learn your stage right, left, etc. Gauze, backlit, tense. That's 1, 2, 3. That's so many keywords right there. Set, atmosphere. So keep shoving those keywords and just shove them at them. So then you've stated your point in green. You're now giving the evidence for this. So you're linking your point to a specific moment in the play. A particular moment that worked well was the actor playing Mr. Kipps, exploring Eelmarsh House. Exited stage left, entered up stage left behind the gauze, where previously all we could see was a blank sheet. When backlit, all of a sudden became clear that there was a hidden part of the stage. You then, because the question is asking you how this impacted on you as an audience member, have to analyze the impact on you, whether this was positive or negative. This made me feel incredibly tense as I imagined what else might be hidden behind the large pieces of set covered in sheets. And then always refer your ideas back to the original question. So that's in purple. The use of these key pieces of set to create the eerie and mysterious atmosphere that was intended. So that's, top grade there. So think about, make your point, link it to a specific moment, analyze the impact on you, or whatever the question is asking you to do. In this case, it's about impact, and it often will be. And then refer back to the original question, and don't forget to use your drama terminology. The more, the better. I think Ella O'Brien actually highlighted every single keyword. I'm not necessarily recommending that, but that was very Ella. So I think I will attach either hers or Dom's to this lesson as well. From here, really, it's just some little practice things for you to do. So it sounds a bit, you might have even heard this in English about the Peter, interestingly, because we've got Peter Pan, point, evidence, terminology, explain, refer. These are really just some examples that you can write out or think about how you would answer in your head, just for your own benefit in terms of preparing for the exam revision. So evaluate the impact that the characterization of an actor had on you. It could come up. And then when oh, that's another thing I need to tell you at the end. Keywords. Right. When evaluating the positive, try to show like your passion by using sort of interesting adjectives like effective, spell it correctly. And we're not going to go into that too much. Think this is a good little fun, well, it's maybe not fun, It's not really fun at all, really, but it's a good little activity to take 3 minutes for you to do, to just write down 5 words that you could use when reviewing your live production that fit into each of these elements, just to jog your memory on keywords. And make sure that you have revised your keywords before you do the actual paper as well. So look at the staple documents in your black drama folders that is called writing about acting or design, and make sure you know at least everything in there as a very minimum. Then here there's just some more examples for you to play with if you feel like it, and some practice questions you can do if you've got time. I'm going to call it the optional learning task for this lesson, but it's good to, even if you don't want to answer these questions in full, to maybe break them apart, like I've talked about in this little PowerPoint, and think about, just do the 5-minute thing where you would plan your answer. So how a live production's genre impacted you as an audience member. You must know what genre means. That is key. Again, it's not come up yet. And if you sit there and you don't know what the genre is, then what? I mean, usually if you're able to make a justification for what genre it is, then you're okay. So last year when artistic intention came up, and some people's understanding of artistic intention was interesting across the country, then as long as they were able to kind of justify it, then they were fine. So again, like I said with the Blood Brothers advice, if the exam board realizes that the country is struggling, then they will accept a wider response. But you must, I mean, it could definitely come up. It could definitely come up for you guys. Director's decisions within the final scene of a production, impact on you as an audience member, how the technical aspects impact on you as an audience member, director's use of semiotics. So you might just want to plan out these questions to sort of help you out. And remember not to panic about this question. Just think about it as lots of sub-questions. So when you look at it, you'll be like, right, I need to write about 3 to 6 things in great detail with examples and justifications. And those are my sub-questions. Don't think about it as this giant, big, enormous thing. First of all, it's not. You only have 30 minutes to write it, so that should give you an indication of how much / little they're expecting from you. But if you think about it as broken down into smaller into smaller sections, it's up to you to break it down into what the 3 to 6 things are that you want to write about for that question. And remember to keep linking your answers to the question and keep using the words in the question. This had an impact on me because this was effective because this, all of them say impact as an audience member here, actually, and it is quite likely to come up because that is what theatre is all about. If there was no impact on you as an audience member, what would be the point? Okay, that is it. Thanks, guys, and good luck. Paper's next lesson, by the way. Okay, bye.